On this episode of Mighty Car Mods, we're going to be mashing these two cars together
to make the ultimate race-ready STI-powered Subaru Levorg.
We have this crashed 2018 STI, which is awesome. There's a bunch of go fast parts in that we're going to be transplanting into this thing, because believe it or not, they're almost the same car.
We got to strip that, pull that apart, strip that, pull that apart, and then swing.
As excited as Marty was about being in a Subaru wagon again, I wasn't, because we worked out pretty quickly that this thing is slow. So I got us a crashed STI that's going to donate all its mad fast parts to our project. And I've also called in a mate who knows just a little bit about these cars.
Can you tell us a little bit about what your history's been with Subarus?
So I bought my Liberty back in 2006, front-wheel drive, naturally aspirated. Over the years of being a mechanic, I built up the skills. I converted it to all-wheel drive, then I converted it to turbo, then went rear-wheel drive, broke a lot of parts, so I went back to all-wheel drive, and yeah.
Yeah, okay. And you spent a bunch of time working in performance shops as well?
Yeah, worked in little workshops, a couple of performance shops, did my own thing for a while, and now I'm at a dealer.
Oh, right, cool. At a Subaru dealer?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, have you ever seen this conversion that we are attempting? Have you seen it done before?
Not to the extent that you guys are doing it. I know of a 6-speed converted one, but not an EJ-powered 6-speed.
Right, okay. So if we can manage to get this actually working as we plan, will it be the only one in Australia?
To my knowledge, yeah, I believe it will be the first and only in Australia, if not the world, with the 2.5 power plant.
Okay. The first and only 2.5 litre powered STI Levorg in the world. You've heard it here. What are we going to do? Can you just run us through we're going to take some of the stuff that we don't need from that and throw it in the bin, this stuff in the bin. What's the process of actually mashing them together?
Basically, we're going to pull everything out of it. Wiring harnesses, ECUs, cross members, everything. So basically got both cars, transfer into the other car, reassemble.
Okay. We actually have no guarantee that this is actually going to work or fit, do we?
No, so that being a wagon, this being a sedan, it may not line up. I'm not sure on the wiring side of things, so that might be an issue.
But we're going to make it work.
That's it. We're going to tackle it. We're going to give it a go.
Awesome. Let's get to it. Thanks for coming down. Thanks for helping us.
No dramas.
So this car is a stat write-off, which means it can never be registered again. Our first job is to take all the parts that we can salvage that we're going to need for our build, and the rest of it can go in the recycling bin.
We're going to be stripping this entire car. The only parts we won't use from the wreck are the rear sedan-only parts that won't fit our wagon. That means interior, dash, steering wheel, carpet, wiring looms, trims, stereo, absolutely everything. The STI is also revealing some grotty signs of its dirty past, with the filthiest cabin filter we've ever seen, and questionable liquids soaked into the carpet.
Maps! This is the guts of the STI, and now we can go cruising in our Subaru.
Well, not yet. Hold on.
Oh, yeah.
Now we are cruising in our Subaru. Martin, I'm going to play a game with you. What kind of car am I? Hold on. I'm just going to put a screen there, a speaker there.
Lots of screens.
2 speakers there. What sort of car am I, Martin?
You're a Volkswagen.
No, I'm an auto salon car.
What?
Like a show car.
Oh, okay.
See, I've got a TV near my feet.
Oh, yeah.
I've got speakers in stupid places.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
I feel ya.
All right.
Next up, we're going to push that car back onto the hoist, because we can't steer it anymore because it has no keys. It's got a steering lock. We're going to stick it on the hoist and get it up in the air and start looking at driveline stuff.
If you ever consider doing something like this yourself, I reckon leave the steering wheel on.
Yes.
And undo the steering lock.
Yes.
Before you leave the car nowhere near you need it to be, and now we can't push or steer it back.
We'll work it out.
That's a little tip for you.
Go, Jax.
All right, let's go.
Maps. So Aaron, under here, it's the first time I've been underneath this car, and that is a big hit, isn't it?
Yeah, that's well and truly done for.
It's bent, because it's bent the whole bottom of the car, and it also looks like it's affected the front suspension, so that's a never regoed ever again, non-repairable type deal, isn't it?
Yeah, like just how much it's been pushed over, I'm actually surprised the chassis rail hasn't been damaged.
I also noticed as it got on the hoist, it was doing weird things too, because it's obviously bent as well. So the hoist sort of picked it up at a funny angle. Like it's fine now, but it's obviously at a different height to what it should be.
Yeah, it's definitely twisted.
And how else does everything else look under here to you?
Well, from first glances, everything looks pretty good.
Just dirty, hey?
Yeah, it's just mud and grime that you get from general driving, but other than that, everything looks pretty straight. I mean, there's a few hit marks where the wheels hit the control arm here, but no, everything looks like it's all reusable. So.
And so the plan is we just basically got to strip everything. Where should we start?
I would probably be starting, start with obviously draining fluids.
Yep.
Start at the back,
Yep.
get all that stuff out, and then move our way over to the front of the car and get the motor and transmission out.
Awesome. And then all the bolt holes, we don't know for sure, but they should line up.
Being Subaru, it's like Lego, it should line up.
Hopefully, but there's a possibility when they build a Levorg, they didn't put in certain mounting points. That's what we might run into.
Yeah,
but
we
fingers
won't
crossed
know
it's
until
gonna
we get to that point.
Okay, so yank it all out first, drain everything, get it on the floor, and then get rid of this car, bring Levorg in, do the same thing?
Yep.
Mad, let's do it.
By far the most efficient way to strip a car like this is to do what the factory did, but in reverse. We disconnect everything that's plumbed into the engine or mounting it, and then drop it straight out from underneath, still connected to its subframe. We're going to drain all the fluids out to prevent spills once it's on the floor, then get the wheels, exhaust and tail shaft out of the way so we can drop out the rear subframe on a transmission jack.
So the rear subframe and its components have been removed from the STI. We got the brakes, we got the rotors, we got the suspension, and of course the diff as well. Is this any more fancy than what's in the grovel?
Pretty sure this is limited slip. Not sure on the sizing, but that should have a limited slip centre. Also, the good bit is the STI has the big fat chunky hubs, big fat chunky drive shafts, and a different stud pattern, and of course our massive Brembo brakes. So this is a fun bit.
Yeah, so all going well, assuming that this is the same, and we think it is, when we get the grovel at the same stage, we should just be able to get this and push it up and go... Beep, beep, beep,
Exactly
beep, beep,
reverse of what we just did.
And once this is all in there, I will no longer refer to it as a grovel. I will refer to it as Super Grand, the 6-speed STI Hyper Wagon. We call it a Hyper Wagon,
Sure.
Martin? Should we lift this
Hyper Sports Wagon
thing down onto that?
We should try.
So far it looks like we got lucky with our wrecked car, but there's definitely no warranty on this purchase. The pitch mount, engine mount and even radiator are completely munted.
So this car was in a pretty significant stack. The airbags didn't go off. It might not have been a high-speed stack, but it definitely had some impact. For example, this is the pitch mount on the top of the gearbox that sort of stopped the engine pitching back and forwards. That is completely snapped. Aaron noticed that the engine was on a bit of a lean, so it's likely it's also got a busted engine mount. So there's no way of seeing this with the intercooler in place. You would never know that's happened. So I guess part of accident repair is also just like working that kind of stuff out. Luckily we don't need this, we can replace it, but we still have to have a dig and see if there's any other damage in there that we have to fix.
It is lucky that we found a wreck without too much front end damage, meaning we'll be able to use nearly all of it in our swap. If you're buying a wreck, check closely that the engine itself hasn't sustained damage that might stop it from running. On a Subaru, busted timing case covers are a giveaway that may have happened.
We have disconnected everything on the top side of the engine.
We think we have.
We hope we have. If we haven't, we're going to find out what we haven't disconnected because it's going to try and stay with the car when we drop the engine out. But now the idea is you drop the engine out the bottom. It's the same way Subaru do it from the factory. We're going to lift the car off is the idea. But first we've got to get underneath and just disconnect a few more bits and pieces.
And similar to what we did at the back, this is all going to be connected on the subframe. So it's not just the motor. It's kind of everything together.
Yeah, and in some ways this makes the job even quicker because you just do the exact opposite in the other car. So rather than pulling out every individual bit, you go slap, put it in, plug it all back together to your aircon and your power and your fuel and all that other stuff.
And then we find out all the stuff that's different and why this won't work at all.
That could still happen.
Yeah.
Yes. So where we want to get up to today is have this totally stripped, and then tomorrow we're going to do the exact same thing to the other car.
Cool, let's dump it.
Oh, dude, nailed it. That's unreal. See ya, STI.
Wow, that's so good.
That's so cool, dude. A couple of hours, man.
That's unreal.
Bit easier to
Man,
do.
that's unreal.
Bit easier to do spark plugs now, huh?
Thanks, Aaron, you big boss.
What a legend. Thanks, man. That's rad. So tomorrow, same thing with the Levorg, huh?
We do exactly the same thing again tomorrow with the grovel, because it's still called the grovel at the moment. Just look at it, it's a grovelly little piece of shit. Yeah, move this out of the way,
Stoked.
get the forklift in,
So stoked.
and then all of this can go in the bin. But first we'll just park it up in case we need to salvage anything else from it.
We'll keep it until the Levorg's actually running.
The grovel.
Yes, that too.
This is some excellent progress, and I'm absolutely frothing at the chomp that I might soon be cruising around in an EJ-powered manual STI Levorg. We've now got a big engine, gearbox, diff, brakes, and all the other mad parts from the STI ready to go into the sports wagon.
We don't actually know 100% that it's going to work. It could be like a Lego situation, or it may not be. But what we do know is all of the components here are upgraded or performance versions of what probably should have been in the Levorg but never was. So here, of course, we got massive brakes, we've got huge rotors, load suspension as well. We're going to be changing all of that stuff, but we're not sure exactly what suspension we're using yet. But that is that. The diff, we actually don't know if that's different, but it's LSD.
It should be an LSD if it's in an STI. So STI gets like the best version of everything. So these brakes are, I think on the back, yeah, they're big 2-pot brakes or 4, yeah, I don't know what they are. The front is the important one because they're 6-pot, which was an upgrade that only came out from that particular 2018 STI, so then there's the 6-pot version. Basically the biggest brakes, factory brakes that come on that car ever. The rear subframe should bolt straight in. Aaron, the mechanic who's been helping us, was saying that this platform, they call it a platform, is like the Subaru Global whatever platform, which means that the car themselves and where the occupant actually sits is the same across the whole range, which is why this is even possible. We're about to find out in the next couple of hours whether it is in fact a bolt-in affair or whether there's things that need to be modified, but it all looks pretty much the same. The STI stuff's a bit chunkier as well. It's got yeah, as I said, bigger brakes, bigger rotors. The stud pattern's different. It's got chunkier drive shafts, a few other bits and pieces. But this is probably the most important part, which is the same as what you had in your STI.
This is the good one. So this is a 2.5 litre, 4-cylinder turbocharged STI engine. Turbo's over here. Little blow-off valve sitting here. This here is kind of what makes all the power. And when it comes to kind of comparison, we're going 2.5 litre versus a 1.6 litre. But it's more than that because the internals of this engine are actually designed to handle more boost as well, which means they respond really well to modifications. There's a huge aftermarket for this kind of platform. Everything from turbos, intercooler, actually everything. You could pretty much replace any component of this, but really the hot sauce, and certainly what gets Marty most excited, is the 6-speed. Now a 6-speed Subaru gearbox doesn't mean that you get an extra 6th gear, which is what a lot of people think. They're like, my car already goes fast enough in 5th. Marty, can you explain a little bit about why the 6-speed is such a coveted and revered component?
So there's a bit of a long history with these 6-speeds. They first came out in the early 2000s. Up to that point, all Subarus had 5 speeds. Glass gearboxes, and people would launch them and blow them up.
And by people, him.
I've done it too, once. And so they were pretty fragile. I mean, Subarus are all-wheel drive, which means the drive is going to all 4 wheels. And these engines can make good power. And if you put that power through a 5-speed, that's basically stock. They are known for braking. So in the early 2000s, Subaru came out with a 6-speed. Apparently the design was somehow licensed via Porsche or something. There's some history there. And it's been a really, really strong, reliable thing. These things are known to go to like 400 kilowatts before you end up braking maybe 4th gear. It also depends how you drive it, of course, but they're really big and chunky. Compared to a 5-speed, you can really see the difference. Now, the transmission in our Levorg is a CVT, which is a constantly variable transmission. It's basically an automatic, and one of the probably most underwhelming automatics to drive, don't you reckon?
Oh, it feels really plasticky, kind of like a rubbery. It's a hard thing to explain. It doesn't feel good, but what I do know about this is people literally can hold their foot to the floor and just sidestep the clutch.
And do donuts.
And off they go, which is amazing.
And do donuts. So there's a few other differences as well with our STI, even though the platform's the same. It looks kind of similar to the Levorg.
Way more aggressive front end.
Exactly, different front bar, better headlights. And then moving to the inside, the dashboard is pretty much the same, but our STI has some better speakers and a few other upgrades like a screen in the top of the dash.
They tried to make the grovel fancy by putting some chrome trims on them.
Yeah.
Doesn't look good. Similar to kind of what's over here actually, like they've kind of added this kind of chrome there to make it look classy. Doesn't look classy at all.
No, it doesn't really work. So the interior of the STI is definitely like a higher spec. So you've got seats that have a bit of leather on them, and then Alcantara, whatever it is, through the middle. So questionable whether you like the red look or not, but either way, that's what the interior is. The back seats probably aren't going to fit, but we think we know how to make it work.
These are really good seats though. So I had these in my car, which I tracked, and they got good support, good bolstering. They do what they're meant to do for a performance car, which is hold you in and keep you controlled.
And little touches like red seat belts, which is kind of cool too. So the interior definitely is spec'd up from what we currently have. So that's pretty much everything laid out on the floor. The exception is there's a bit of wiring loom that we haven't yet pulled out because we don't know if we need it. We don't know where that actually shifts in the Levorg versus the STI, and also maybe like fuel tanks and a few other bits and pieces. But the party is definitely up the front with the engine and the 6-speed gearbox, making this thing a manual. They never came out in manual, which is everyone's biggest complaint about them. The actual direct injection engine that's in that is kind of actually more modern than what we're pulling out, but doesn't make the same power and no manual. Just no manual.
So just because it's newer doesn't make it better.
An STI swap is the cleanest and closest to factory way to do what we're trying to do.
All right, Aaron, we are down here under the grovel. What do you see?
Well, the first main differences is the exhaust path is slightly different.
And way thinner too.
Way thinner, yeah. Transmission, as we know, CVT. It's beefier, but also
Is this the sump? This little thing that's 10 mil thick?
Yeah, that's the sump. There's actually two variants of the CVT. So there's the low torque one, which is a TR580, which looks to be this one. And the high torque one, which comes out mostly in the turbo models, which is weird, this doesn't have it, is the TR690. The way you tell the difference is where the valve body sits.
Yeah, okay.
Low torque's up top, high torque's down the bottom.
So a big consideration for us is whether this tunnel is going to be in the same place, right?
Yeah, I mean, looking at it, it looks like it should all fit. Again, we won't know until we actually try.
Now, a couple of differences that I can see back here. There's electronic handbrake. The diff is smaller, definitely smaller
definitely
than that.
smaller.
So we weren't sure before, but it is smaller.
Definitely smaller diff. Other than that, the rear end looks the same. Obviously, as you said, electronic handbrake, so that's going to be a small hurdle.
Yep.
But everything else looks pretty much the same.
So other than that, we just start getting rid of stuff.
Yeah, just start pulling it apart and put it back together. Hopefully it all works.
Yeah, hopefully. All right, let's get to it.
The big Subaru elephant in the room is that as time marches on, the EJ engine that was first produced in the late 80s is hurtling towards the end of its life. The version that's in our crashed STI is about as good as they got from the factory, but as Subaru has been developing their direct injection tech, the power output is starting to match and in some case exceed its older EJ sibling, particularly with the 2.4 litre version that's in their newer cars. The FB engine that's in the Levorg is the third generation of flat engines that have been around for over a decade. So if Subaru's EJ and 6-speed manual combo is so good, why is it now missing? It's a lot of words that start with E: emissions, efficiency, and of course electric. Don't be surprised if the next STI you can buy from Subaru has a whole bunch of tech including electric motors. To stay compliant with government regulations and to stay competitive with other brands that use less fuel, Subaru has had to stay up to date with current tech.
Where do you think that's going? Not in the bin.
By mixing and matching parts, I'll be able to have the best one of the EJ engines ever made with the best gearbox ever made in a wagon which I've always had a soft spot for: winning.
The next step in the process is to swap all the small stuff from the engine bay. Even though it looks the same, a lot of it's different. So what are you seeing there that we need to swap?
All right, so starting off, we need to swap over the air curtain lines. They're different. Obviously, the fuse box.
Yep.
This one being a direct injection turbo, this one being port injection.
Yep.
They're completely different. Because of the bigger brakes on the STI, we're going to have to swap out the master cylinder and the brake booster.
Yep.
So we've got ample brake pressure.
Easiest to do all this now, hey?
Yeah,
because we could slap
so
the
much
engine in, but
easier.
then it's going to be in the way.
Yeah.
So it might be quicker just to
So right now we've
swap it
got
on.
so much room. It's perfect time to do it. This one being automatic, we do have to work out something about the clutch pedal. So now's a good time to assess that.
Yep.
ABS units, that's all got to be changed over. Yep. And
At least a side by side though, right?
Yeah.
Grab it, take it out of there, grab it from here, put it in there, done.
That's it. And
All right.
as you can probably see, there's more stuff in this engine bay right now
Yes.
that isn't needed versus the STI. So
Awesome.
a
All
lot
right.
of clearing.
Let's crack into it.
Let's do it.
A conversion like this one isn't that much different from how we've used front cuts when they were really common. Japan often got the fast and fancy versions of cars, while Australia got the boring base models, and a front cut was a great way to get everything you needed. We're approaching this swap in a similar way, and by having both cars next to each other, we can grab every little detail and part so that all the factory functions work. Now, even though the Levorg never came out with a manual, it has a hole cut in the firewall for a clutch pedal, proving that this shell was likely made on the same production line as its WRX and STI cousins.
This here, that all the pedals mount to, is that same thing over there?
Yeah, it will be.
It actually has it, or we've got to try and put something in there?
The chassis so far is the same.
Yeah, right.
Like every little bolt hole and even stuff that, like that car has basically parts there so that it could be manual, but they never made it as a manual.
So it
ever.
thinks it could be if it had a brain.
If it had a brain, it'd be looking at it going, I have a hole here for a clutch. Why do I have that? Maybe I'm meant to have a clutch. Do you know what I mean?
And now it will.
The sheer amount of components that need to be swapped is absolutely huge. And while there could be shortcuts where parts are similar, it's risky, because if we don't swap them all now, we might find out later that there's 3 wires different buried somewhere under the dash, and by then it'll be too late.
Have you ever done this before on a Levorg?
Never.
Is it going to fit?
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Now, everything that we think needs to be in here is in here so far.
Yeah, so we've swapped over the brake booster, the ABS unit, we've taken out the CVT cooler lines because that's not needed, and the majority of the wiring's all out, ready to go.
So it is now time
Can we just
for
do
the...
it? Can we please just do it?
We're about to do it, Martin.
Let's do it.
Okay, well,
This is the bit everyone's been waiting for. Let's just do it.
I'm not actually confident that it's going to fit. And I'm so not confident that it's not going to fit that if it does, I will chew on one of the socks that we found in the back of the car, and I will let these guys find the stinkiest one and I will chew on it if this fits. That's how confident I am that it won't fit. Changing the spark plugs on this kind of engine when it's in the car is a pain in the ass, so we are going to put in a brand new set of NGKs while it's out, because there's lots of access, because you can actually get a tool like this, which you can't when it's in there. So we're going to change all of those, then it can go in, and then I'm going to be munching on sock.
While we don't necessarily recommend that you remove your entire engine to change the spark plugs on your Subaru, it's definitely easier than when it's in the car. Next, we're going to roll the STI subframe under the Levorg and get it as close as we can. Line it up and then bolt the subframe to the chassis of the car.
The more we peel back the banana of this car, the more obvious it is that Subaru used a lot of the same tooling in the factory. Being how expensive it would be to create the dies for the enormous presses that make all these metal parts, the cost saving by being able to stamp out a whole nother class of vehicle using the same production line would be considerable. This also means they don't have to re-engineer things like engine mounts, subframes, suspension geometry and everything else. And that is excellent news for us, because it seems like this is actually going to work.
Everybody, the 2.5 litre STI engine is in the Levorg, and to the best of our knowledge, this is the only time this kind of engine has ever been in this kind of car anywhere in the world, planet and universe.
One main reason for that is Levorgs are really only an Australia and a Japan thing, and these 2.5s are really only a US DM thing. So this combination is pretty unique, but it's awesome. It's big block, 2.5 litre, and it's got the 6-speed manual, which makes it all very exciting. There's a few little fiddly bits and pieces to do now, but this is the big hurdle that we had to get over to get to this point.
There are more videos to come, so keep your eyeballs on the Mighty Car Mods YouTube channel, and we'll see you next time as the build of the STI-powered Levorg continues.